Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't checked out my previous two Ready or Not videos, then be sure to check them out. They are on my channel somewhere, you'll probably have to just look for it. But either way, this is the third one that I am checking out. It's called Ready or Not's Most Tragic Villains, Ides of March. I did hear a few things here and there from everyone in the comments, but maybe because everyone keeps telling me a whole bunch of stuff, I don't fully remember everything that you guys tell me, unfortunately. Or maybe that's a fortunate thing when I am reacting to these. But I will be reacting to more Ready or Not more consistently, so I hope you do enjoy them. And let's get started.
Throughout your playthrough in Ready or Not, you're bound to encounter at least one of the game's various factions. Perhaps you'll fight drug manufacturers affiliated with the Los Locos gang, or maybe you've already had the distinct displeasure of bumping into local terrorist cell The Hand. In short, Los Sueños is absolutely chock full of bad guys, and as we progress through the game's missions, we'll see that for ourselves firsthand. Something interesting about some of these groups, though, is that not all of these situations are so morally black and white. In fact, there are some cases where we'll actually find ourselves sympathizing for the criminals that we're chasing. Their motivations feel human, and
I'm curious about that one.
In their shoes, we might be able to understand where they're coming from. And today, I wanted to talk about one of these sorts of groups. One that, while completely wrong in their actions, don't necessarily seem to fall underneath of that term of evil that we see with some of the other groups. So without further ado, please make yourself comfortable, grab yourself something to drink, and accompany me as we investigate the Left Behind.
The Left Behind?
Now this story starts out when we receive a call for urgent response into downtown Los Sueños. Sitting U.S. Senator and presidential hopeful Cornelius Fremont was finishing up a rally at Brisa Cove Memorial Park when suddenly the unthinkable happened. Multiple rifle shots rang out from the 12th story of the neighboring luxury apartment complex. A sniper, or snipers, had taken several shots at the senator, and while luckily no civilians were injured, Senator Fremont has been struck in the upper body and is currently clinging to life at a nearby hospital. The shooters are yet to have been captured and are suspected of still being within the apartment building. It seems that rather than fleeing the scene, they've instead chosen to hunker down, suggesting that they might be packing quite the arsenal. LSPD has managed to clear the entire building up until the 12th floor, but now, needing to actually engage with these men, our squad D Platoon is sent in. We initially make our infiltration via the fire exit, and once we get our bearings, we can quickly start to see the extent of this situation. The hallways are littered with bullet holes and shell casings. Broken glass and other debris crunch beneath our feet, and we can even see where some of the vending machines have been rearranged to serve as makeshift cover. Whether this was done by the residents or the shooters, though, remains uncertain. It appears that the Left Behind has completely taken over the 12th floor, and at this point, I think it's safe to assume that the tenants here are being used as their hostages. Something also worth noting before we progress much further is that the intruders have booby-trapped the entire 12th floor. This mission in particular has always really irritated me because I always get about halfway through it and forget to check a door, and suddenly my team is dead and I am dead, and it makes me really angry. So please do yourself a favor and make sure you check every door before opening it. Now, aside from these traps being placed all over the place, we also need to watch out for the enemies themselves. These men aren't your run-of-the-mill active shooters. These are experienced combat veterans, and as such, they're much better equipped to fight in an environment such as this. Anyways, if we make our way down the right side of the hallway, we'll encounter the first of several rooms that we'll need to clear. Apartment 1204. Inside of it, we'll find an eccentrically decorated living room, which is filled with these stand-up glass panels. And while these are pretty to look at, they completely ruin our line of sight in the other areas of the apartment, even providing cover to some of our enemies. So we need to operate with an air of caution. Once we manage to clear this room, though, we can begin to look around a bit and investigate. And here here, we can start to piece together an interesting little side plot that follows alongside this mission. The first item we
side
find
plot?
is a note on the ground in the kitchen, which reads, "Are you serious? Do you have any idea how expensive these things are? You couldn't have just settled for some fabric?" And on the counter, we can see a receipt for what this note is referring to. There is a bill for $2,500 for the transport of those big glass panels that we saw earlier. The cost here is simply for transportation, so there's no telling how expensive
No
the
wonder.
panels themselves cost. After looking around a bit more, it's clear that the elderly couple here is in the middle of a pretty nasty divorce. The wife is the one who purchased these panels, and she's been using them as a means to keep the apartment divided. In the bedroom, we can find a note written by the wife that reads, "Eric, don't stand in this area. Keep your damn things out of it." And here we can also find the couple's bed, and on it we can see a pillow labeled hers. In the middle of the headboard, we can see a small cross made
Oh
out of
my
ink,
gosh.
dividing the bed into two halves. It seems that the couple had tried to at least stay in the same bed as one another, but eventually things soured further, and the wife kicked the husband out to the couch. We can even find the labeled his pillow sitting on the sofa in the living room, which is a pretty nice touch. Here we can also look at the portraits of the family, all of which show the husband's face covered with black tape. The whole relationship here seems to be incredibly toxic, and
Yeah.
the further that we look, the worse it gets. Around the living room,
I kind of feel, but I mean, I don't know who is at fault. I mean, probably both of them are at fault, and they're probably very toxic to each other. But at the same time, they went that far to split the bed, and then in the end, she kicks him out to the couch. You might as well just get another apartment, and just leave while you guys are having a divorce. At that point, don't you think? Feels like they're just making it worse for each other by living in the same area. But then again, I'm not really sure like how expensive it is in this city for this particular game. But I do wonder, like, couldn't, I don't know, they have, maybe because they're old, they're not willing to like just leave and live separately while they are progressing the divorce. And covering the husband's face with tape seems kind of excessive too. But then again, I'm not really sure how it works exactly, but it just feels like a lot of work when they could have just moved out and lived separately. Patience. But we'll see.
we can find not so subtle books labeled, "So, Your Husband's a Loser, Diary of a
Oh my
Bored Woman,"
gosh.
and "The Distinguished Independent Woman's Guide." Tucked away
Oh
between
boy.
two of the dividers, we can also find a small chair, and on the nearby table, there sits a fire escape map of the apartment complex. Now, I initially thought that these little writings on it were from the intruders, but this was actually written here by the wife. She was tracking her husband's movements, waiting for him to leave, so she had the opportunity to do something. And we'll quickly come to realize that that something is someone. The next door neighbor.
What?
You see, some of these apartments are actually connected to each other via
What?
adjoining rooms. And while her husband has been away at work or running errands, the wife has been having an affair with their neighbor. And
Oh my gosh, she was doing what? Now I feel even worse for the husband. At that point, the wife is just horrible. At least you could even have waited until like after the divorce to be with someone. Wow, I don't even know what to say here.
the neighbor's apartment, we can find protection sitting on a nearby nightstand. And in the bathroom, we can see where the wife has written him a love note on the mirror and lipstick, which reads, "Don't be a stranger. Love is only an adjoining door away." In his living
Wow.
room, we can also find another note that reads, "When can I see you again? I had a lovely time. Don't mind my husband. He is as soft as they come," which only
Oh my
further
gosh.
twists the knife here. At the time of our arrival, though, it seems that the husband has finally found out about this affair. We can see a man's clothes strewn all over the bedroom floor, as if someone had to leave here in a hurry. We can also find another note, this time from the husband left in the adjoining room. Listen here, sailor boy. Don't ever let me catch you around my wife again. If you even glance at her, I'm going to make sure you regret it. You'll meet your Navy friends sooner than you think, scum. In the couple's living room, we can also see a smashed TV, where the husband, likely in a fit of rage, sought something to take his anger out on. But I've gotten a bit ahead of myself here. After all, we're trying to stop a team of ex-military assassins, not serve as marriage counselor. So with that being said,
But that was quite
the rest of
interesting.
the building. The further that we progress in this mission, the more that we'll start to see the absolute arsenal that these men are carrying with them. While some of the guns that we found aren't too out of the ordinary, the LMGs and other weapons these guys are carrying are. This is in stark contrast to the pistol and shotgun wielding enemies that we've been bumping into in our previous missions. These men have come in here with the clear intent to do damage, and after searching another apartment, we find out why. In the final apartment room is where we'll see the primary attack point these men used. The ex-vets rented out the equivalent of an Airbnb up here, and it was from this vantage point that they took their shots at the senator. The room is covered in graffiti and posters, all of which share the same sentiment, a resounding hatred for some sort of anti-vet bill. It's mentioned in our briefing that the US had recently passed legislation which cuts VA hospital funding, making it impossible for some veterans to get the medical care that they need. This is a topic that we've seen mentioned in some of the other levels too, as the passing of this bill has led to widespread unease all throughout Los Sueños. And who else was behind this bill but Senator Cornelius Fremont?
Wow, no wonder they wanted
that these veterans
off the
are trying
guy.
to send isn't made out of anger so much as it is in desperation. Their signs read things like, "I didn't fight for my country to watch my brothers die of hunger. Don't leave your veterans to die on the street." And finally, and perhaps most poignantly, we are fucking human. As I mentioned before, these men are all experienced combat veterans. They've seen some of their closest friends die overseas, and now they've returned back home only to have their benefits stripped from them when they need them the most. These are men who
that's
objectively
horrible.
deserve medical care. They aren't some scary foreign adversary, they're former US troops. Some of them are even wearing prosthetics at the time of the attack. And as I said before, while what they're doing is wrong, their motivation and reasoning behind it is very sympathetic. Not being able to get appropriate medical care is a very real issue in the US. And regardless of which side of the political aisle you fall on, I think we can all agree that our healthcare system incentivizes profits over saving human lives.
I think it's even worse, especially when we have veterans who fought in such horrible conditions and wars and get severely traumatized by that experience. And then to come back with no medical care or any kind of assistance just feels like a slap in the face. Like they literally got themselves traumatized to protect this country, or America, if you don't live in America and you're watching this. And yet, instead of being treated properly like a normal human person and being thanked for their service, they're being spit on by people who only care about profit and greed. And just like Isaac said in this video, the fact that our country values profit the most, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican or whatever other political party, we can probably all agree that everyone should deserve basic level of healthcare. And if they have fought to protect the country, then of course they should be allowed to have that level of care without having to worry so much about money. Like they literally risked their lives. It would be such a embarrassment if our country can't even provide for veterans and those who risk their lives to keep the country safe so that we can live normal lives. It's one of the things that bothers me the most about this country is the medical system, the healthcare. And for those who actually do have chronic illnesses, it gets even worse for them because the amount of money that they have to shell out just to keep it under control, especially if it's not super common, can be quite expensive even with health insurance. In general, our healthcare system is very broken. And honestly, I don't know if there's any way for it to be fixed properly with the amount of fighting that goes on about various different things. But regardless of that though, when it comes to the game, it just goes to show that the veterans, I mean, he said that they're not like angry, I believe that's what he said. I think they're more disappointed in the country that they served. Like they took most likely an active choice to serve, and yet they were treated like this. And the fact that most of them have prosthetics shows how much they sacrificed. It's a very visible reminder for the players and for the people in this game's world of what they sacrificed, and yet they're being thrown to the streets because they don't have enough money or they're not given enough care, even though they're traumatized and they have literally sacrificed their body, their physical health to protect the country, and yet they're still treated like trash and just looked upon as not important because it doesn't give them profit or something along those lines. It's very, very sad when you think about it from a human moral perspective.
And that's what we're sort of seeing here with this anti-vet bill. A greedy senator looking to reallocate funds to suit his agenda takes it away from the people that need it the most. It just so happens that the people he took it from here, though, were well equipped to get their revenge. However, as much as I want to say that the left behind are the good guys in this situation, they definitely aren't. We can find several bodies throughout this entire floor of the apartment building. These men came in without warning and took over the place. And if somebody happened to get in their way, they were killed. These people had nothing to do with the passing of the bill. They did nothing to wrong these veterans, and yet they were gunned down just the same. That's the thing with vigilantism, right? More often than not, it's incredibly sloppy. And while the perpetrators may be only aiming to hurt one person, they can ruin countless other lives in the process.
I think what doesn't help though is that for them, now, I have never been in the military, so I would need people to actually like confirm if this is the case. But if you were in such an environment where you were ordered to kill and to, perform missions, then eventually you do become desensitized to some degree. So even if the mission is the most important thing, then you complete the mission and you don't think about other stuff. I don't know if that's actually the case for the military, but that's what I assume is the case, that their mindset is going to be. And even if they were to come back to, I guess, normal society, quotes, big quotes there, because even normal society is a war of its own to everyone individually. But to them, it's very hard to break away from a mindset that you were instilled in very harshly and very strictly, even if you're back, which is why I do think that doesn't help with the transition that they have to go through to get used to normal society again when their mindset is stuck to how it was from when they learned in the military. And I do wonder if that's why they had no qualms with gunning down the other people who were getting in the way, because to them their mission is to assassinate the senator. But if people are getting in the way of that, then they have to gun them down. At least I think that's the perspective and mindset that they were having during the whole process, which is why they gunned down these innocent people. Not all of them, it seems, but the ones that supposedly most likely got in the way of their mission, so to speak.
And while I do feel sympathetic for their cause, their reasoning does not justify these horrific actions. Once we manage
Yes,
to
that's
capture the
true.
rest of the enemies, though, the mission comes to an end, and we can return back to the police station. And when we arrive, we can take a look at some of the evidence we collected in the evidence room. And some of this paints the entire situation in a brand new light. The first piece
What?
we have is a rangefinder that was used by the snipers to gauge the distance that they'd have to shoot. Nothing too out of
Okay.
the ordinary, right?
That
But
makes
the other
sense.
two pieces aren't nearly as simple. The second piece of evidence is a marked map detailing the Left Behind's plan of attack. On it shows the location of different police blockades, as well as
That's
the route
concerning.
of the senator's emergency motorcade. As it says on the item's description, quote, someone gave them this
Yeah, that's
intel.
very
This piece
concerning.
of information is incredibly interesting to me because it means that someone close to Senator Fremont wants him dead. And they were willing
That's
to
true.
feed this sensitive intel
Sheesh.
out to angry ex-military members just to make sure that they got the job done. Our final piece of evidence is also our most ambiguous. In a box supposedly belonging to one of the suspects, we can see an old photo. 5 mysterious men stand outside of a building marked USIA, the United States Intelligence Agency. And next to this is a suspicious picture of Breesa Cove Memorial Park, the very same park this shooting took place at. Now, I'm not really quite sure what to make of all of this yet. Could the
That's
USIA
quite
really be
strange.
involved in this attack? Perhaps this is some sort of false flag maneuver meant to drum up more support for that anti-vet bill. Or maybe it's for something even darker. I can't help but shake the feeling that we're not quite seeing the full picture just yet. Maybe as we progress further into this storyline, we can start to piece together some more answers. What we do know for absolute certain, though, is that the Left Behind tried and failed to assassinate Senator Fremont. And while he managed to escape this situation with his life, we know that he's still very much in danger. Someone close, perhaps even in his security team, willingly leaked intel out to bad actors and stood idly by as someone made an attempt on his life. Perhaps his policy has angered.
I do wonder if, and based on the intel that we got about or not intel, but the third piece of evidence he talked about, if the intelligence agency is involved in all this, then it makes it even more tragic because, again, when I talked about the military having this mindset of getting the mission done, don't question, I do wonder if because of that mindset, the veterans are unfortunately much easier to manipulate into doing the biddings and the bad actions that others in the back want them to get done for their own benefit. And if that's the case, that's even more messed up because the veterans put in so much effort into protecting the country, and yet even the own country's organization is manipulating them for their own bidding, for their own greed, not actually caring about the veterans who did put in the work and sacrificed a lot of their sanity and even their physical health. It's quite heartbreaking that the veterans are treated like this. And if the intelligence agency is a huge backer or the true instigator of this, then that's really messed up. Of course, obviously, I know it's a game, so in real life, there are similar cases too, I'm sure. And I'm not going to deny that, but if we just focus on the game itself, it's still quite a tragic incident within the game world. And that's something that we can probably agree on, right?
even those working closest to him. Something worth mentioning here is that the title of this mission is Ides of March, famously remembered as the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated. Men that he had thought to be his closest allies turned their backs on him, and I think that's also what's happening here. And while this situation might be over, this certainly isn't the last we've seen of the Left Behind. At the end of the day, I think that Ides of March is one of the best demonstrations of conflicting morality that I have seen. Once you find out about the reasoning behind this attack, you feel sympathetic for it. But then you see the destruction that this attack leaves behind, and you lose that sympathy. This level does.
In most cases, I believe that conflicts are never so simple. It's never black and white. But at the same time, there is the understanding that when it comes to morals, it's a little bit clearer. Like, you can be empathetic towards a person and understand why they're doing what they're doing, but it doesn't mean that you should allow them to continue what they're doing if it's harming other people, no matter the cause that they have. Of course, it's a different story if it's like self-defense and you're protecting yourself, because that's protection first, not killing someone, if that makes sense. The complexity of conflicts is very much apparent here, and the conflict of morals and reasoning also come into play.
A really fantastic job at just fucking with your emotions, and I'm absolutely here for it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this mission though. Do you understand where the Left Behind are coming from, or are they just a domestic terrorist group with a different coat of paint? You be the judge. Also, before I end things, I just wanted to let you all know that I've opened up an official Discord server for this channel. So if that seems like something up your alley, check out the link in the description below. Finally, an enormous thank you goes out to all of my patrons and channel members. Asterix762, Za, CrankyBox99, Tori Hunter, Neostang, and Alexander. You guys rule, and I appreciate all of your love and support. With all of that being said though, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's video. You know I love you. I'm out.
I have to say, I know I said this before, but I really enjoy his videos, mostly because thankfully there wasn't as much like gameplay, so like I don't see like a first person perspective, so I feel less motion sick. You know, as some of you guys might know from my previous videos that I mentioned in the comments or in the video, I have severe motion sickness, so I can't really play the game. So being able to, I guess, enjoy the story and the lore through content creators who clearly are very passionate about the game and learn the story through them feels very nice. Like I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate everyone who has watched my reaction videos and have commented and liked it and shared it with others. I really appreciate you guys too. Mostly because it's interesting to learn the story and lore of something that I typically wouldn't play myself, but also expands my consumption of the variety of stories I get to consume on a daily basis, and more people recommending me new videos and even other kinds of games, stories, and lore videos has made it a lot more interesting for me to share my thoughts on what and how it connects to real life. Because that's what I like to talk about, how the story and I suppose the lore can actually connect to our own lives and what we can learn from it, regardless of whether we think it's surprising or if it's something that anyone or any adult should already know and be aware of. And if they don't, then they're quite living under a rock or something. I don't really like to think of it in that way. It's more along the lines of appreciating the way that they present the story and the themes that some people might want to avoid on a typical basis and bring attention to, so that when we see something similar in real life, we understand just how complex the situation is, or how we should even react to such a situation. Things like that I feel are important. And I do think that games allow us to appreciate different occupations, such as the police or the intelligence agencies or doctors or whatever else. Because even if you don't do those jobs yourself, if you're able to experience it through games, that is very valuable if it allows you to empathize with the people in those occupations, but also, of course, to understand how their job might work, even if it might not be like 100% accurate. If it at least shows at least 5% accuracy, we could still learn something from it. And for this one, I might not be a veteran and I might not have been in the military or, even be in police to meet these kinds of people. It's very important for us to understand the feelings and struggles that veterans go through and the issues with their healthcare system, at least for those who live in America or live in a country with similar healthcare system, and who it might affect, even if you yourself might not be affected. Who knows, maybe one day it could actually affect you. And I think that's the most powerful thing about this game, is that it allows you to have more empathy for those around you instead of ignoring it and pretending to not understand when you actually do. All in all, I just want to say that I enjoy the cases I've been looking at so far. It's very tragic, obviously, and sad and realistic to a very good degree. Maybe not like 100% accurate or whatnot to real life, but it is a game, so obviously it's gonna have some, I guess, creative license with the situations that they create. But either way, it's clearly a good way to empathize and learn something new or reaffirm your understanding of things through games like Ready or Not. And I hope you were able to enjoy the video, and if you did, then make sure to support the original video. And if you enjoyed watching my reaction, then please give it a like, comment below, subscribe, and share. And I will see you guys in the next one. I will be reacting to more, so look forward to it. Bye!